Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Valeria and this is the Off-Road Trench. There are two things that kill a person's life: laziness and fear. I already have a lot of videos about laziness, procrastination, discipline, bad habits, addictions, and there is a lot more to talk about. For example, meaning in life, uncertainty, and others. But now I want to talk about fears. Why? Because laziness is quite easy to track. It's enough to write down what are you doing and at what time for a few weeks. And sometimes it's enough just to look at your screen time on social networks to see how much time you waste on stupid pictures and memes. But fear is a feeling we run away from, the feeling that we don't want to experience. How then to define it? Often the consequences of fear are the inability to achieve what you want, the lack of self-realization, because fears make you refuse to do what you need, even if this is the only way. If you don't have what you want, then there is a problem. If you do nothing, then everything is clear. You do nothing and you have nothing. You need to overcome yourself and your laziness and work on yourself every day. This is a huge job that I definitely cannot cover in one video, and I have at least 10 videos that can help you. However, even 1000 videos will not help you if you do not take actions, because only you control your life. But what if you constantly work on yourself, work every day, but you still don't have what you want? I will not you a magic pill, and certainly there is no one single action to receive what you want. But if you cannot come to certain results, it means that there is a problem that arises periodically and interferes with situations in all areas of life. There are one or more persistent problems that you are not aware of. You haven't tracked them down and therefore you cannot solve them. They occur again and again. And no matter how hard you try, at some point you make a mistake because of this problem. Often this problem is your deepest fear. You may have ambitions and desires, but you will not achieve them if you do not understand your fear. Often its solution is your willpower, courage, and determination. But if you don't realize what kind of fear it is, then the solution is introspection. This is a retrospection of events and emotions, the recollection of situations that you don't want to repeat, the recollections of feelings and sensations that you avoid. For example, powerlessness, defenselessness, inability to solve a problem, the need to obey, anger, aggression, hatred, awareness of a threat to life, psycho-emotional and physical violence. If you start thinking about why you cannot do certain things, if you start listening to what you're experiencing at a specific time, you will feel something that you want to escape from. And your task will be to immerse yourself in the analysis of your feelings, to remember the situation. You will understand that some time ago you were trying to defend yourself, and therefore now you associate these feelings with a threat, and you avoid any situations that could potentially lead to these feelings. Perhaps there were several key situations when you failed to cope. You didn't solve the problem, and this gave rise to fears. Since then, you have unconsciously come up with many ways around it and run away from everything that will make you experience this fear. This is avoidance of certain situations, a certain type of communication. This is the difficulty of doing something every time. This is a repetition of the same situations, for example, in a career. This is a typical behavior of people towards you. This is buying something for money just not to face a problem. This is an agreement with the person you don't like, just not to do what you don't want. This is being in some place, just not to face discomfort. It is also an agreement to endure what you don't like. A little more, a little more. This is justifying yourself by saying that you can offend someone, you can be misunderstood, you can be rude. This is putting off a task for later, although it may be tiny, but procrastination will lead to huge problems or missed opportunities. Often fear is a lack of habit, a lack of skill, For example, socialization, the ability to negotiate. The more you think and put off, the harder it is to start doing. Therefore, let's talk about why a person is afraid, what are the main types of fear, and what to do with them. It is important to understand that there are two types of fears: an immediate threat to life in the moment, and imposed fear, which is not associated with direct threat to life and health. In the first case, this is a natural reaction. If there is a real threat to your life, you will not have fear only if you have eaten a lot of tranquilizers. But once you get rid of this fear, you enjoy life. It is not this fear that prevents you from living. Obsessive thoughts are the reason that prevents you from fully functioning, interfering with your happy life. Fear of losing, fear not being fulfilled, fear being left alone, without money, getting sick, dying, becoming helpless, fears for family and friends. Some of these fears are rational, and solutions can be found for them. If you are afraid to fly because you are worried that your children may be left alone, despite the fact that an airplane is the safest form of transport, then you can find other ways to travel. They will take longer and be more expensive, but no one forces you to fly on the airplane, and what is normal for others may not be suitable for you. And other examples. But there are irrational fears that constantly hang out in your head and dictate you what you can do, what you cannot do, how you can live, how you cannot live, who you cannot communicate with, who you need to be afraid of, and a huge number of unnecessary thoughts that exhaust your mind. They don't leave you to live normally and do what you want. And this is the quality of your life. This is your achievements, your convenience, your responsibility for your results. You suffer in all areas of life every day, and your constant emotion is dissatisfaction. But this dissatisfaction not with other people, but with yourself. Why? Because this is your reaction to your problem that you haven't solved for many years. But besides the feeling of unconscious, unreasonable fear, the feeling of just stupid fear, which at first glance you cannot explain, there are more serious things. It is the fear to live the life you want, the fear to start moving toward this life, the fear to act in order to live. What is a person afraid of in this case? Firstly, a person is afraid because he is afraid, because everyone is afraid, because he is used to being afraid, because a person is taught to fear, because he was instilled with fear, because someone is afraid for you and tells you about it. But this fear doesn't exist as rationality. This is just a made-up thing. No one has ever experienced the terrible thing that happens when you change your life. Why? Because if a person doesn't change his life, how can he know what is scary there next if he has never been there? If you are already in a swamp, you no longer like your life, you are sick of this situation, then what can be more scary? If you do nothing, nothing will change. If you do the same things every day, your every day will be the same. Your mood will always be the same bad, or get worse. Your life will always be the same because you do the same things every day. So what could change? The more changes you make, the more and faster your life will change. But reading an educational book is not changing your life. Watching a good smart movie is not changing your life. Meeting interesting active people is not changing your life either. Because books, films, people, they can broaden your horizons, give energy, help structure knowledge, understand yourself. But books, films and people do not take action to make your life change. Only you choose every minute how you spend this minute. On the same thing as yesterday, so that tomorrow everything remains the same, or on what you are afraid of. Not just to change something a little, which comes easily to you, but to do something that you are afraid of. If your fear is rational, then you will find several solutions. And if it is irrational, then nothing will happen. It is illogical. It is a habit of fear. But when overcoming your fears, there shouldn't be an option to return to your old life. Why? Because it means that you still choose your old life and consider it a good option for you. You are not getting rid of the old bullshit situation, but consider your swamp as a place of salvation. And is your current life is a place of salvation? Is this the life that you want? Someone will say, this is a calm, stable life that I know like the back of my hand. Maybe yes, but maybe it was instilled in you. Maybe your swamp is one of the most terrible things in terms of self-realization and survival. Maybe your lack of skills, lack of justified stress, lack of habit of seeing problem, solving problems, lack of joy in your life, lack of desires and actions. Maybe this is scary, but you, being inside the system, do not see it. Secondly, a person is afraid of his helplessness, confusion, powerlessness, panic. But how do you think, if you don't learn to react to problems, solve problems, analyze, will you be able to get rid of helplessness? Your reactions to a problem you don't immediately see a solution for are fear, a feeling of powerlessness, helplessness, and panic. And these feelings arise from the fact that you are used to feeling this way. But that doesn't mean that you cannot actually solve the problem. You are used to reacting emotionally because you were not taught as a child. You don't have the skill to analyze situations that is happening to you. But if you are asked to look at the situation abstractly, as if you were a spectator, and asked what you would advise this person who is in a panic, then most likely you will calmly find a number of solutions. As long as you are not a participant in the situation, as long as you are not emotionally involved, there is a high possibility that you can come up with solutions. And this skill can also be developed. Thirdly, a man is afraid of the unknown. Why? This is a mechanism inherent in nature. Man spent 99% of his existence in danger, and for 99% of history and evolution, man survived, fought, expanded the era of his existence. And this was natural selection. Because of this, one could say that the human brain is designed in such a way that everything new means danger. But in fact, now in many respects, the upbringing influences more. The upbringing by family and society, which was raised by their family and society. Why do I think that now actions and learning new things are regulated more by family and society and not by our Asian brain? Because there is enough information to understand which actions are truly dangerous, what steps should be taken and what should not be taken, what the potential consequences for the actions are. There is awareness of your actions, analysis and decision making, and not reflexes and instincts of the fight or flight type. There is willpower that allows you to act the way you want, develop abilities, skills and habits. And one of the most important, when children grow up, they explore the world around them, and they have no fear. They try, they fail, they try again. They are not afraid to try again. They are not afraid to do something, simply because they don't have the habit to fear. Children are afraid if they have been traumatized. For example, a dog scared them, or because their parents constantly put pressure on them. You don't know how, do not touch, this is impossible, it's scary, it won't work, I will do better, and so on. And these are the mildest options, because it can also be very strong psycho-emotional and physical violence. Learn to work with the unknown, with the lack of control over many events. It is important to admit that you cannot control absolutely everything. What is paradoxical about it is that a person worries that he cannot influence all the events in the world, but he doesn't worry about the fact that he cannot control his own thoughts and emotions. And this is the fourth reason for fear. A person is afraid because he is used to it. Man has something that animals don't have: highly developed memory and imagination, which are often to his detriment. These are intrusive thoughts that prevent you from functioning and that you have simply become accustomed to. Anxious thoughts are a habit, and the more often you think anxious thoughts, the more often they visit you. You have formed neural connections to constantly be in fear, anxiety, and stress. You need to learn to manage your condition. If you are captivated by an interesting movie, video game, or social networks, your fears disappear. Your attention is focused on other interesting things. But as soon as you return to the real world, you find yourself in the state that you are accustomed to, a state that you unconsciously chose. And you need to change this state. You need to learn to manage your thoughts, emotions, and actions. You control your arms and legs, and you are not shaking your head while watching this video. And if you suddenly start shaking your head uncontrollably, you will definitely understand that something is wrong, and you will solve this problem. But when we talk about thoughts and emotions, it is normal that they shake in your head, that thoughts and emotions involuntarily come and go, create hurricane in your mind, and upset you. You give commands to the parts of your body, and they obey you. In the same way, you can work with your mind and concentration and choose which thoughts you will think and which thoughts you will discard. What are some common standard fears? Fear of not being perfect, fear of being wrong, fear of being rejected and alienated, fear of making a mistake. And the main fear is the realization that you have lost your life. Let's sort them out. Why do you need to be perfect? Who said? Parents? Boss? You are an adult. Moreover, it's impossible to do something perfectly the first time. Furthermore, you will never have ideal conditions. You will always have factors that you cannot control. But you either take it and do it and don't pay attention to anxiety, which is a habit, or you justify your inaction and promise yourself to start self-development when this, that, and that happens someday. But it's impossible to predict everything, study it, schedule it, and be 100% ready if you are not a professional. And to become professional, you need to be imperfect at least 10,000 hours and constantly improve. Definitely, there are still a lot of things that hinder professionals, but their difference from other people is that regardless of external and internal conditions, they always receive the desired result. Look at the quality of my first videos on YouTube. For example, number 0, number 1, 2, 3, 4. Should I have started a channel with such quality of footage? How would I get an improvement in video quality if I didn't make one video every week for over a year? In addition, I will watch this video after 2 years, and again, I will see a huge difference. In this case, should I do filming now? I don't think that the current level of my videos is great. I need to train my speech, grammar, memory, articulation, gestures. I need another background. I need soundproofing. I need a camera, not a phone. There are only 120 subscribers on my channel, and the previous video gained 33 views. So maybe I shouldn't do anything. Or maybe I shall try as much as I can and constantly strive for improvement. Why can't you be wrong? Because it was used against you to humiliate you, to show disrespect, to show superiority. So this is not your problem, but these people's. I agree that you don't have to show always that you are wrong, precisely because any mistake you make can be used against you. But why cannot you admit to yourself that you are wrong? Because you are afraid of feeling unpleasant emotions that you experienced before. This is a decrease in your self-esteem, and your ego screams, "How is this possible? How can I be wrong?" But this is arrogance. If something doesn't work out for you, then you are wrong, regardless of whether you admit it or not. And if you don't admit it, then you will not succeed again. Quiet your ego. When you start feeling that you are the coolest person, you make the biggest mistakes. Fear of being rejected. This again is either your ego sitting on your shoulder and pretending that you are above asking for anything. Either it is the fear that you are not needed, you are an empty place. Or it's the fear of feeling stupid. I shouldn't have done that. That was stupid. It wouldn't have worked anyway. And this lowers your already low self-esteem, and you become even more withdrawn. Many people are afraid of rejection. For the same reason, they are afraid to ask even for basic things. They are afraid to ask for advice, to communicate, to get to know each other better. And this closes many opportunities from you, because communication is the key to success. I have several videos about it. In fact, no one really needs your problems, and you will be rejected. Why should someone want to help you, solve your problem, give you money? You have to accept that people don't care about you if they have to do something for it. They care when they want to gossip, because it's interesting and it's entertainment. But to do something is a whole other level of tension. In addition, people will refuse you even if they are supposed to help you, for example, under a contract, under the terms of service, and so on. For example, in government agencies, in stores, in contact centers, and so on. Because people don't care. People are lazy. Therefore, you will get your result only if you ask and insist because you need it. You will get your result only if you have what people really need and you know how to achieve your goals through communication. People also have a desire to get everything at once. But this is not good. The desire to get everything at once often hides the fear of being rejected. Why? Because a person often wants to prove others his ability to success, quickly become financially independent, afford everything he wants, be needed by society. Sometimes a person wants to do this to prove his independence and demand to other people. A man, a woman, parents, classmates, colleagues who didn't accept you in their company, and so on. But this leads to a distortion of values, to a lack of respect for other people, for work, for the opposite gender. This leads to a misperception of what is truly important in order to be happy and fulfilled in all areas of life. Fear of being stranger. What will others say? This is another common fear. I think this. If a person is self-actualizing, if he loves his life, if he is ready to let new events and opportunities into his life, he will definitely not say anything bad, because he himself often does things that are unusual even for himself. He works a lot, knows how to appreciate the work of other people, and understands that in order to achieve goals, sometimes you have to do unusual things. If a person just likes to gossip, then there are also few options. In the first case, the person wants to talk only about himself, and even if you do something very significant, then without authority, he doesn't care about your actions. And in the second case, he will discuss you and come up with something that he likes and that he once heard somewhere. This raises a question of how might this gossip really affect your reputation. Sometimes it can ruin your life, but more often it's just chatter out of boredom, where people say nasty things about you because they don't do anything and they don't know how to do anything. Can you really be stopped by the gossip of people who are bored or jealous of you? It is not about you, it's about them. They discuss you, then Jack, then Ashley, then again you. And you move on. Why shouldn't you make mistakes? It is important and necessary to prepare for some action or work. But a real understanding of how it should be done comes with many years of complex experience. You can read 100 books on how to dive to depths, but when you get there, you won't be able to do it. Theoretical knowledge won't do it for you. You only need your courage and constant training. And theory is needed in order to reduce stress levels, so that at the right moment you can retrieve the necessary knowledge from the depths of your memory and apply it in practice, if possible. Only the one who did something hundreds of times, made mistakes, analyzed them and did it again, will achieve what he wants. And he will already be able to do it intuitively. There are a lot of people in the world who pretend to be experts. They have a lot of education, they have a lot of diplomas, completed courses, but in reality, what matters is that either you can solve the problem or you cannot. Of course, with the right level of hypocrisy, in the absence of principles and morals, with the priority of money and status over the value of people and real benefits, people become millionaires. But that's not what my channel is about. I can absolutely say that if you're a professional, you will earn a lot, because there are never enough real professionals. And it often happens that a person who works well is modest and unknown, but those who really don't know how to do anything other than imitating hectic activities in the form of beautiful presentations and calls for actions occupy the high positions and receive 7-0 salaries. They are not shy, are they? They are not afraid that they are talking nonsense. They are not worried about the fact that they deceive someone, make someone poorer, promise to someone mountains of gold, and for some reason you are afraid of being yourself and you are afraid to demand fair attitude. Just start doing it. Otherwise, such people, pseudo-experts, will fill the world, and there will be only idiots in the world, and many of them will end up in power. Fear is a habit. Action is not only a habit, but also a skill. The big problem is that as children, we were not taught to see problems, solve them, understand what we want, analyze how to do it. But now I am talking not about childhood, not about the fact that someone is to blame. What I'm saying is that you can learn this. Just like you can learn a new language, just like you can learn to skate on your own or with a coach. You can also learn the skills to calm down, slow down, understand your feelings, understand your fears, and so on. These are all skills to understand what you want and to do something that you have to, even if you don't want. There is another biggest fear, in my opinion. Fear of realizing that you have missed your time. To start acting, you need to admit that all the times that you put off and procrastinated, you lost. You will have to admit that you simply lost all those years while you were afraid, lazy, making excuses for yourself, and these years will never return. It's scary to think how many opportunities you missed. You cannot even imagine what opportunities you could have had if you had acted. It's scary to realize that you could have already fulfilled your dream. You could already have had what you wanted. You could be a happy person if 5, 10, 15 years ago you took the plunge. This is partly why people don't believe in themselves. Not because someone convinced them that they cannot succeed. Not because they were held back by circumstances. Not because a partner or parents prevent them from developing. Not because there is not enough experience, education, friends, and so on. But because it is unbearably painful to admit to yourself that you have not achieved success just because you did nothing. It is the fear of facing reality. This is the fear of realizing that you have failed your life. But even if this is so, even if you have spent 25, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of your life uselessly, you still don't know how much time you have left and what you can influence. Perhaps you won't be there tomorrow, so maybe you should try to be happy and decide to take action. Or maybe you will live another 50 years, and even if you have already lost 30 years, you still have 50 more years to reach your goals. Or maybe you don't have the 50 years. No one knows. But I know that what matters is not how much time you have, but how you spend every minute of your life. Because only you can make that minute full of meaning and purpose. Or you can make this moment such that you hate yourself. The longer the situation continues, the more difficult it will be to take action. At some point, the pain of realizing that you have lost your life, the hatred for yourself will be too strong to accept and overcome it. And in this case, you will definitely not begin to act, and will simply continue to exist in your own small world, in no way connected with reality. And you will hate yourself and everyone around you. It is not people, not circumstances, not finances, not health that is holding you back. You are your own friend and your own enemy. You can learn any algorithms, read the rules of life, behavior, communication, take business courses, get several educations, but at one point you will either run away from the opportunities that will be provided to you, or you will make a mistake by doing something out of fear, and you will not even understand it. And such situations will repeat all the time, and you will not even understand initially that this is not normal. Only after a while, after analyzing your actions, will you understand that something is going wrong. Only after deep analysis, finding fear and constantly working to get rid of this fear in all situations, will you understand what you were running away from, and you will start to look at the events in your life differently. You can work on your self-development either independently or with a specialist. But even if you have the best specialist in the world, a maximum of 50% of the solution to a problem depends on him. But usually 20% of the result depends on the specialist. And 80% of the result depends on you. There is no magic pill. Even if a specialist thoroughly studies your problems and gives you the best tools for work, you yourself will have to do all the work. You yourself find yourself in this situation. You yourself have been living with this problem for 5, 10, 15 years. And another person cannot change the perception in your head for you, even for all the money in the world. Yes, there are specialists who want to keep you for the sake of earning money, who will tell you the same things in different forms and feel sorry for you. But there are specialists that will immediately make it clear that they will work with you only if you work yourself. Such specialists are not ready to listen to a whining, because during this time they can help people who come to solve their problems and move on. Therefore, the only way to help yourself is to work on yourself. We very often come with limitations for ourselves, rules that were imposed by someone, prohibitions that you hear only in your head. Only you hear the voice in your head which constantly tells you what can and cannot be done. And this voice limits you. You set barriers for yourself, get tired of yourself, and mentally destroy yourself. You need to calm down, understand what you want, understand what you don't like, understand what you need to do in order to get what you want, and methodically move towards your goals. You may continue to make mistakes. You may not succeed. You may fall. But it is better to make a mistake, fall, get up, and take the next step than not to do anything at all. 90% of people don't have anything because in order to have something, you have to work. What distinguishes those people who have everything from those who have nothing? Some people don't take risks and don't want to take risks. And other people take risks and often put a lot on the line in their lives that they value. They understand that they can lose what they have, and they are constantly losing, they are constantly falling. But they take risks take responsibility, accept their failures and mistakes, and constantly do what they are afraid of, and give up comfort. Until you overcome your fear and emotions, until you begin to control yourself, you will not achieve what you want. Your core and power grows not from your financial situation, not from your family history, not from your education, but from the way you work on yourself, from your willpower and ability to overcome troubles. You will have to change yourself. And I am not saying now that you will succeed. On the contrary, I am saying that 90% will not succeed. And this video will not help you, because you should get up and do it. And finally, I want to answer a question that I am periodically asked both online and in personal conversations. Why are people so stupid in their thoughts and desires in the 21st century, having the opportunity and access to information, cinema, books, and access to checking this information? The issue is not stupidity, but laziness. Anything that requires work and effort causes rejection for many people. This is how our brain works. Everything that simplifies life and perception causes quick endorphins. That's why we want to enjoy only part of the benefits of civilization, mainly scrolling through social networks and swallowing short emotional videos. And we also love TV series that help us switch attention and kill time. All this stimulates further simplification of perception. The brain gets hooked on the idea, I will work later, and for now I will rest. And this later never happens. Moreover, pleasure has become very accessible. Now you don't have to read a thick book, so that by the end of it an insight will pierce you, and you will experience bliss, and then digest, think, and savor for another month. Today you will experience instant, albeit unmemorable joy from videos of shaggy kittens, funny dances, and a skier stuck in the snow. Well, why do we need to analyze, search, check facts, doubt something? This is work that requires patience, perseverance, curiosity, and your own pre-developed picture of the world. For what? In general, there seems to be nothing scary about it. After all, why does everything have to be complicated? However, if most of your life you agree to easy and fleeting joys, then where there is the guarantee that tomorrow you will not agree to simplification in other areas of life? Quickly agree with the boss when he is wrong, so as not to waste time on arguments. Do not say no to your partner when it is already obvious that he is not your person. Why complicate things? In general, everything more or less okay. Agree with officials who violate your rights, and then also agree with the state that is organizing a war on your behalf. Why go deep into all these details if everything has already been written, shown, and explained? You just need to scroll. I am not saying that sitting on social networks for a long time is a sign of weakness and being controlled. I am saying that scrolling can be different, and it is in our power to make it healthier and more conscious. One way or another, new technologies in the hands of lazy people can become a grenade that can destroy our lives. And yes, the chances of becoming driven and influenced by others are significantly increased. After all, you are not used to straining and turning on your brain when you really need to turn it on. And when a person understands that there is a situation that contradicts his principles and concepts of good and evil, he doesn't have a picture of the world that is even close to reality, not to mention his possibilities. And in order to change the situation, it is necessary to make unrealistic efforts in an unknown but definitely dangerous situation. In general, maintain a balance. Take a break from all this entertainment and informational noise. Solve your problems in order to understand more, remember more, so as not to complain, not to put up with your internal protest, not to blame other people for what you didn't do. I hope this video was useful for you. It was Valeria, the Off-Road Trench. I wish you all the best and see you soon.